Professional Development Committee of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India would like to request the Abhay Charger, Chairman, Professional Development Committee, to please give the welcome address.
Thank you, Priya, and good afternoon, all the dignitaries who've joined today, all participants, members across the country who's joined today for this wonderful webinar. I would say it's really a pleasure to welcome all of you. Special thanks to our eminent speaker, Mahesh Bhatki sir. Thank you so much for sparing your valuable time. Of course, it's the time is exactly in the middle of the day, 1 to 3, but sincerely thank for you to sparing your time and sharing your experience on data analysis and AI in forensic investigation topic, which we have on this DNA series, which we say as Discover New Avenues. So that is what the initiative which PDC has taken. And we try that we come up with some new avenues where we can have speakers like Mahesh sir and all these areas which can be looked at by participants. So I think this is one initiative which PDC has taken for new professional opportunities for chartered accountants. So, and I also sincerely welcome CA Piyush Chajir, the Vice Chairman of Professional Development Committee, and who's joining us on this webinar series. And also will be joined by CA Dayanivas Sharma ji, who's the Chairman of Digital Auditing and Assurance Standard Board from Hyderabad. Thank you, Dayanivas, for joining this, because the reason of having the Chairman Dab also with his experience on the forensic investigation, the areas of AI, which this committee is doing tremendous work. So I'm sure he'll also be able to share his experience on the opportunities which members should now look at. So once again, welcome all of you. And quickly, on the PDC front, from the Professional Development Committee as Chairman and Vice Chairman, we are taking a number of initiatives, more important, to identify emerging areas and, which really create some meaningful learning opportunities for members so that they stay relevant in the fast changing professional environment. So data analysis, AI in forensic, because I'm sure members are now taking this area of forensic investigation. A lot of opportunities coming. I may say not too many in tier 2 or tier 3 cities, but once you prepare yourself and keep ready with how you can, analyze the entire data, because when you do a forensic investigation, you have to analyze the entire data, which actually AI could really help how we can do that. And none other than Mahesh sir would share his experience of doing this total data analysis and taking the help of AI and also telling the members, participants, how this could best assist and help the members to do an effective and efficient forensic investigation. So like you're saying, the digitization, has been increasing. Transactions have really gone up. Business processes are changing. The risk, which now is involved in the business, the frauds, which we see often now in these days, technology really will play a very important role. And data analytics and artificial are emerging as powerful tools in forensic investigation. From the PDC, this, of course, is one of the initiatives, and there are a number of initiatives which we have planned this year. More importantly, CNAG. With CNAG, we started last year audits of autonomous bodies. CNAG used to do it, but now they are doing it with chartered accountants. So this is one initiative where we had also issued the empanelment, the expression of interest in the month of January, February, where about 1,200 such expression of interest was received from the participants, where, we had these firms who have actually registered, and now we'll get opportunities for this year in the year 26-27. This is the audit for autonomous bodies. And we also discussed on the postal department. That is one area, where the PNT, where not much efforts have been done from the department for services with the chartered accountants. So this is again an area which we are looking at, how we can provide training to the postal department, how we can, do some technical guides, maybe create some documents for them, maybe some publications, and also help them when auditing could be done with the postal department, and also with respect to the postal bank, which now have started. But more importantly, with the post offices, where we can collaborate with CNAG, and CNAG has given a positive response, and hopefully in coming months, we'll have this area as an opportunity definitely coming to all of us. Once again, we've all been looking for new and traditional, non-traditional opportunities, and this is one area where we are looking at. And I'm sure with Maheshji, with his experience, will definitely add value, and we'll have some takeaway. More important from the practical aspects for 1.5, about 90 minutes when we hear him. I'm sure the members would definitely be most benefit. I would sincerely encourage all the members to proactively upskill, upgrade themselves. When you see yourself 3 years down the line, after 2 years and last year and today, what is the change which has happened? Either you added new data analytics tools, or you have changed the processes, or you have done some infrastructure improvements, or in resources, or in people. All this we need to assess so that we enhance the practice level, we upgrade ourselves, we upskill ourselves, and that is what the need of an hour is. So before I conclude, I once again express my sincere appreciation to our distinguished speakers who will be sharing their valuable. Of course, the Chairman Dab also will be sharing his insight and practical experience on this subject. And I'm sure we'll have a meaningful knowledge and actionable perspective for all the participants. Once again, welcome all of you. And I'm sure this would be highly informative and engaging session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I request CA Piyush Charger, sir, Vice Chairman, Professional Development Committee, to give the opening remarks for the session.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Priya. The Chairman, CA Chajarji, Chairman of the Professional Development Committee, Senior Central Council Member and the Chairman DAB, CA Dayaneva Sharmaji from Hyderabad, Professor Maheshji, and thank you very much, first of all, Maheshji, for joining and accepting our invitation to address. And the way I look at it, my experience of course, forensic, we have Dayaneva, who is himself an expert into a forensic. But the topic which is well chosen, we used to think, the normal member, we used to think that data analytics itself is a topic in itself, AI is a topic in itself, and use of data analytics and AI in a forensic investigation is going to be, I think, so a great learning experience in the next 2 hours. More importantly, as you all know, that forensic investigations is basically around the corner. The broadly, as I know, is the gathering evidence. And obviously, when you are gathering an evidence, you are put to a question also how the evidences have been gathered ultimately and how the conclusion has been reached. I believe that in this session, obviously, when you are discussing data analytics and the AI, they would become a tool to effectively speed up the evidence gathering also, and also analyzing it well to reach to the conclusion, I'm sure. So it would be a very insightful, obviously. Of course, this year already Chairman has briefed, so I'll not go into that. My only the request to the members would be that this being a webinar, we will also try to do physical sessions on this, because I know this may require a lot of practical exposures also and practical learnings also. And as suggested, in fact, before the session started, Maheshji had suggested that we should do it more physically. So definitely we'll try to do physical sessions in this regard also. But even in the webinar, I'm sure if you have been attentive for next 2 hours, you will gain a lot of knowledge to it. So with this, thank you very much to all of you, and have a happy learning to all participants. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I now request CA Dayaneva Sharma, sir, Chairman, Digital Accounting and Insurance Board, to please give a special address.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you very much. Chairman, PDC and Vice Chairman Abhay Chajarji and Piyush Bhai, thank you very much for inviting me today to address. And thanks to Maheshji also for giving consent to come and share his views with regards to one of the most important and interesting topics, because both the topics, when you talk about fraud, forensic or AI, is connected in some or the other form with me. And I am delighted that I get an opportunity to talk about all things together at one go. However, I will not take much time, but if you permit me, when you talk from a perspective of, opportunity for chartered accountants, because Professional Development Committee works towards newer opportunities, newer avenues, which I am always delighted, and the way the chairman, vice chairman are working are been doing a great job. So if I am permitted to share a video, I can just give the thought that chairman has actually thought about, and let me do this for you all. One moment. I hope the screen is visible. And let me quickly go to the videos. And this, I hope this is audible.
World is evolving.
Is it
Technology
audible?
is rapidly advancing. And businesses today are increasingly revolving around tech platforms. With this shift, the government is exploring possibilities to control cyber issues through regulations and frameworks to track activities. And as this transformation unfolds, the profession is evolving with it.
ICAI has introduced ISAS, Information Systems Audit Standards, FAIS, Forensic Accounting and Investigation Standards. Because the future of finance is no longer traditional, it is digital, investigative, and deeply tech-driven. And that's exactly where DXFS comes in.
DXFS, Digital Transformation Finance Summit, is a step towards transforming the evolving demands of the profession. Last year, something powerful happened. Over 1,500 plus professionals, regulators, and industry leaders came together at DXFS 2025. Not just to attend, but to experience the future of the profession. Ideas were exchanged, opportunities were discovered, and for many, it became a turning point in their careers.
And this year, we are raising the bar. DAAB ICAI, introducing DXFS 2026 second edition. Bigger, sharper, more impactful. 22nd and 23rd May at Novotel, Hyderabad.
This is where you will understand where the profession is heading, what new opportunities are emerging, and how you can position yourself ahead of the curve. From forensic accounting to digital assurance, from systems audit to cyber security, from regulatory expectations to real-world insights. Everything you need to stay relevant and ahead.
And here's the reality. 2,000 plus professionals are expected to be there. The only question is, will you be one of them? Because in a rapidly changing profession, those who act early lead, and those who wait follow.
Don't miss the platform that can redefine your next 5 years.
I hope stop sharing.
Recording stopped.
I hope you understand what the chairman wanted to talk about is with regards to the digital which is coming
Recording
up,
in progress.
the forensics which are coming up, the requirement of cyber laws which are coming up, DPDP which is coming up, newer opportunities and newer avenues are to be looked in. See, just imagine for a moment that these days you don't go to a bank for withdrawing money. Today you use API. You don't even go to ATM anymore. So the point is, so much changes are coming up, which is not imaginable. And here, when we talk about using data dashboard or data analytics as a tool and AI as a tool, I'll give you very quick 2 updates. After that, you will appreciate what I'm trying to tell. My point is very simple. We have been appointed as a forensic auditor, 300 GB data, every form of data, which is you can't even imagine, whether it is PDF, whether it is a scanned document, whether it is a photograph, whether it is a bank statement, which has been put in different format, Excel, Word, PowerPoint, every data, every form of data, which was available, 300 GB, 436 bank accounts were to be tracked. Just imagine the kind of size and time that is required if you want to do the same thing humanly. And most importantly, tracking the transactions in a manner which is required. Why I am sharing with this, when you talk about forensic, it's a great opportunity, but the volume of transactions are unimaginable, might be 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, you don't know. And most importantly, what is the kind of form of data which is going to come before you, you don't know. Now, the point is, how do you use AI in this? We used Copilot, and this data size which I'm talking about, which would have taken humanly to do not less than 4 to 5 months minimum. We have completed this engagement within a record time of 35 days and all kind of data mapped, analyzed, and put together. Now, what is it I'm talking about? Please understand. It is not about only single knowing technology is important. It is not that important you understand the finance and anything. You need what all today for our own forensic standards. Friends, it is very important that every reporting framework has to go in a systematic manner. Unfortunately, in the globe, there is no place where there is a standardized formats which have been defined how to report. Because most of the forensic reports were very generic and non-conclusive. That is where ICI has taken a step forward to come up with our own forensic standards. Now the globe is behind us as ICI to give, they want to adopt our forensic standards, which is followed with information system audit standards. We are the first in the world to come out with that. Now, there are two important things which I would like to tell. PDC committee under the chairmanship of Abhayji, the way he's taking it forward, so impressive, so right. As a board, we actually do so many things, but these professional opportunities are to be put before to the members by the PDC committee, and which has been very effectively done. Now the point is these standards, how that need to be understood, how that adoption has to be done. These all becomes a critical factor. And friends, let me just tell you, we have close to 36,000 chartered accountants who have qualified DISA. We have more than 16,000 chartered accountants who are qualified forensic. Education is not sufficient for getting an engagement. Time has come where you need to collaborate with all those forensic experts together, invest in the right quality tool, and then move forward to do a larger engagement. Otherwise, the bigger firms will become more bigger. We will stay back in the smaller way. Am I right, Abhay? It cannot be a different thing. It is time where we need to come together, collaborate, and see when PDC is getting an opportunity for us to by going to Reserve Bank of India, SEBI, or multiple other regulators and appoint chartered accountants. Unfortunately, we are individuals who are trying to go and fight a war, which is not possible. And most importantly, the kind of tool technology which is required to be done, that is further not possible. We don't want to invest. It is time where we need to invest in those things. If we collaborate together, we can invest together and get a high quality, softwares and tools which is required. Now, most importantly, these 3 points. After this, I conclude my discussion. One, the forensic was a certification course. Your council has approved unanimously to convert the certification course into a diploma course. Council is approved. We are waiting for the approval from Ministry of Corporate Affairs. The day it is to come, it is not going to be a certification course. It will be a diploma course. And it will be called as DFI, Diploma in Forensic Investigations, which is very unique in totality. Certification course are being conducted by the committees or the boards, respective boards. But when you talk about diploma, it will be conducted by the institute examination committee. So it's going to be tough. So we are actually coming out with the bridge course, which is going to be the new people who are going to join forensic are going to do DFI in time to come. The people who have already completed, they'll be getting a bridge process. By virtue of that, you need to write that examination which is required for standards of forensic, and then you can actually become a diploma holder. So there is a bridge course which is coming up. Similarly, the DISA 4.0 which is coming up, including the DISA Plus, is actually all hands-on experience. Just imagine. Hands-on experience where we are going to put in the cloud a complete hands-on experience tools where you can actually go download. Right, one important factor which people don't know, we are coming up with one of the most unique forensic and DA lab in Hyderabad Center of Excellence, where we are investing close to 3 crore rupees, which we got the approval for. Will not be incurring so much, will be less than that. We have ordered 50 high-powered computers which will be loaded with all tools and technology which is required to do a forensic investigation data analytics. Can you just imagine? And you are going to be trained on those systems in a very specific manner. Number two, the most important point is there is a sandbox approach which has been created for doing the entire hands-on experience. So we are creating our own case studies. We are not copying from anywhere. ICI is doing it by hiring the experts together on this DA lab and forensic lab. This will be trained. First time ever, this is coming in. Again, thanks to Abhay Bhai, who has actually been one of the most important vocalists in the council to say that, look, time has come not only for training purposes, we need to use these computers for pay and use model. मैं जी सोचिए अगर मेरे 10 लाख रुपए का सॉफ्टवेयर खरीदना था कितना महंगा है अपने लिए but now you can actually pay and use those computers, go to the institute, work there, take your team, completely work on it. You have a residential block which is there, a lab is there, food facility, everything is there. Just go there with your data, pull out what is required from the cloud, execute it, move it, deliver it. So that is where your institute is going. So now one side, when we are talking about creating the infrastructure and ability for people to upskill themselves is one side. Second side, PDC is ensuring that high quality reach out is being done to make people understand what is required to be done in time to come. Friends, my best wishes. You have a fantastic faculty with you. And I feel with this inputs, you will have that little more spark to get ready for the future that is tomorrow. My best wishes to you. Thank you, Abhay, for inviting me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I'll introduce the faculty, and then sir, you can start your session. CA Mahesh Akki sir is a BCom FCA and CSA qualified. He has been in consultancy of finance, audits, and investigations for the last 23 years. He has been a regular faculty member for the certificate courses on fraud investigation and forensic accounting conducted by ICAI. He has also contributed to the various research papers and articles published by ICAI and BCAS. We welcome you, sir.
Shall I start with my presentation? Can I share my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I hope you can see my screen. Everyone can listen to me. And
Yes.
yeah. So my voice is clear?
Yes, sir. Clear.
Okay. So just to set the session, firstly, I would like to thank the president and the vice president of our institute for giving us this opportunity. And also thank Abhayji, Piyushji, Dayanivasji, and all for putting all these good words and giving the keynote address and opening remarks. And indeed, it is a pleasure to interact with all the participants. So a big thank you to all of you and all the committees that is working towards what Dayanivasji just said. I think it is great that Institute is planning ahead and looking forward amidst the chaotic situations that we are. And data is no doubt going to be the next oil and the next issues that we are going to, day in and day out have to deal with. And this is something that we'll have to go forward with. So therefore, thank you all of them. Thank you, Priyaji, for all the support and giving all the whatever guidance required to make this thing happen in terms of all the background work that you have done. And everyone, all the committees, I think, thank you for this opportunity. And I should also, warmly welcome all the participants who have been attending from far and wide. And I'm sure, I don't know from which part of the world you are joining. So if you are from India, a big good afternoon to you. Otherwise, good day to all of you. So let me start with this presentation. And in this presentation, the objective or the agenda is going to be very simple. So we are going to look at the global fraud, the awareness of fraud, what exactly is fraud, why investigative skills are required, because as we have been saying, this is a professional opportunity that is going to come to all of us, and therefore we need to understand a little bit more about the frauds and the investigative skills. How do you spot business leakages using data mining and AI techniques? AI is something that is now going to be developed into a huge thing. Dayanivasji was just mentioning about a lot of data, especially unstructured data. How do you work with unstructured data? Sometimes 300 GB, 200 GB, you get whole host of data in front of you. So how do you deal with them? So I'm going to touch upon how do you work with data, how do you work with big data, and what can you do about it? So I'm going to talk a little bit more on that. And most important for all our audit and investigations is how do you derive a risk-based samples? Because whether you are doing audits or whether you are doing investigations, I think sampling is something which is very important, especially in investigations. If you have any direction, of course, you go into the directions to find out evidence for yourself. But sometimes, you are also in a situation where there's no direction. For example, there is a whistleblower complaint against a particular employee or a particular manager or a particular board member or a plant manager. but there are no specific guidelines given, or there is no specific evidence or details given of any wrongdoings. In which case you have to take a general trend. You need to understand their roles and functions, and in those cases you have to start with somewhere to understanding where certain things could have gone in the wrong direction. And for that you need to understand, and you need to gather some samples. So how do you derive those samples in those situations becomes very important. So we are going to talk about risk-based samples, and this will be also useful to anyone who is doing into any normal audits as well. So when you talk about this professional development into investigations and forensic audit or forensic accounting, there are three skill sets that are required. One is accounting, auditing, and investigations. Now, friends, we all, I'm sure most of the participants are from the bodies of our CA Institute. And as chartered accountants, accounting and auditing is something that we all grown with. And this is something which is natural, habit to us. It is a next to oxygen that we breathe in day in and day out. So therefore, only you need to have, or you need to polish your skills in investigations. So an investigation is also not something which is new to mankind, because as basic human beings, this is our basic instinct of investigating. So how do you structure this investigative instincts in a proper direction, in a professional manner, which can turn you very easily? And this is a natural phenomenon, natural progression for any chartered accountant to come to this investigative techniques. And therefore, this is something which is, though we can call it a new professional opportunity, but I would say this is something which is very, very logical and very progressive in its own way. So basically, I will start off to show that, to give a little overview about frauds. Where is the frauds? Where is the world of frauds today? What is happening in the entire world? And for that, I would request you to look at the reports which are given by the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, ACFE body. This is a body which does a lot of work on the frauds, and they work only on occupational frauds. So they're not looking at the government bribery cases and things like that. So they talk about occupational frauds. And from that perspective, every biannually, they do their survey and they come out with this report to the nations. And if you look at these reports over the last maybe 10 or 12 years, you will find certain characteristics which are very important, which are very distinct, and they keep repeating in every survey. And I thought this is something that we should take a note of. One of the things that they point out is that 5% of revenues are lost to frauds by mostly any average business houses. Now, 5% is a huge amount, right? If you take average. Now, there are organizations which have a profit margin of something like 10%, 15, 20% of their top lines. And in that 5% loss to fraud is a sizable amount of their profit they are losing to frauds. Another thing is what they're talking about is global loss and fraud is about 5 trillion US. So this is again a very, very large amount. This is something which is probably sometimes more than the GDP of the entire nation. And therefore, a large amount of loss is made on fraud account. And therefore, there is a need for a lot of forensic accountants to really look at this. If it can be prevented, it needs to be prevented as well. Then what they talk about is the average duration time is around 14 to 18 months. That means after the fraud has been committed, by the time it surfaces, by the time someone takes a look at it, a sizable amount of time is lost in terms of, some of the evidence which may be wiped off completely. For example, if you talk about CCTV footages, now CCTV footage is over a time, maximum amount anyone stores is maximum over 3 months or so. So if you're talking of fraud, which you are going to look at after 18 months, a CCTV footage kind of evidence is lost forever. So from that perspective, this is a time which is also very important, and a lot of evidence can be lost within that. So we need to also see how this can be, improved in terms of surfacing the fraud earlier, maybe detecting the fraud earlier. From that perspective, it is important. Another important point, they say that 40% in the cases, they created fraudulent documents. So now for us chartered accountants, I think this is very important, because if there is a documentation which is sitting somewhere in the organization, somewhere in the accounting system, because ultimately all documentation go through the accounting system and all. So if you are, equipped enough to understand, to look at things from a different perspective, you may be able to catch something at the budding stage itself. So from that perspective, it is very important. Again, what they point out is 12%, there was no attempt to conceal. That means 12% of the cases, people are not even making any effort to conceal that. They keep the document as it is. And then there are a couple of other things which are also very important that which we can look at on the screen. So from all this perspective, like for example, 84% displayed one red flag of the other. Now this is also something which is very important, that 84% of time people have displayed some red flags of the other. Therefore, are we equipped to look at that red flag? Did we really notice that? And if we had, probably we could have seen the fraud from a different perspective. We might have seen it in the early stages itself. So this is like a cancer. If you detect something at early stage, you may be able to arrest, and you may be able to contain that. If not, it goes to a proportion which is far more wider, and it may sometimes bring down the organizations. It can create issues for a lot of people. So all put together, I think this is very important. And one of the important findings of these reports, again, for the last 8-10 years, is that audits, I mean, if you talk about internal audit, external audit, management audit, all auditors put together have detected frauds in almost something like 17 to 20% of the cases. And most of the audit the frauds are not detected by auditors, but by external people, from tips, from employees, customers, anonymous well-wishers. So this is, I think, where we as auditor, chartered accountant, have a huge role to play. Can we equip ourselves in a way where we try and increase this percentages, so that, because society is expecting us as chartered accountant. Maybe from our perspective, we have ways of things of doing audits. We may have ways and means of doing certain reviews. But society at large, any average person on the road, if you ask him, like, if there is a fraud or a problem in a company, and they'll say that what was the role of the auditors? What was auditors doing in that case? So this is what the expectations are. So this is where I think seminars and webinars like this becomes very important. Can we sharpen our skills? Can we sharpen ourselves to go after certain things? Can we find out certain things before something else or it is taken an ugly turn? And this is where we come from. And therefore, this brings me to thinking, why do auditors fail to detect fraud? Many times, we see a lot of this. I'm sure auditors are not equipped to, detect fraud all the time. But, maybe there are certain situations in which it could have done. Or why do they, do not understand those frauds at the budding stage and all? So I think there are two basic things that which comes to my mind. One is, I think we as chartered accountants, and as Dayanivaji was saying earlier, we need to look at these labs and all. Now that institute is going to create, we should take course of that, because this is something, again, we keep saying we need to change our systems. Because audit by itself is now becoming a very predictable kind of exercise. A lot of people are aware what you are doing. It just reminds me of one particular anecdote. When I was in my article stage, we used to do some bank audits. And as bank audits, we used to be given some kind of branches, maybe 8-10 branches in a particular locality or a particular wide area. And then you keep going from one branch to other branch. It was like a hopping event where there were 4-5 people team, and you complete one in 3 days, 4 days time, then you hop on to the third, and so on, so forth. So, we were at one particular thing in some in a B-class city somewhere, very far off from Mumbai. And we completed that one particular branch. We went to other branch, and then we went to a third branch. So while we were in third branch, the first branch auditor called up and they said that, while you are there, can you just, one of you come over here? Because, in our audit, there was one particular checklist to be completed, and that is pending. So we asked him, like, what it is. So he's saying, no, you have to do a surprise cash verification. So then we said, okay, we forgot about that. So we went back and we conducted that surprise cash verification. Now, friends, this is where we are. Like, I don't know what is surprising about that. If, it was done with a full knowledge, it was, the auditee themselves are saying, come and complete this surprise verification. So I don't know who should get surprised, whether the verification is surprising factor or the auditor should get surprised at how this entire thing is happening. So this is where we are. So, procedures, I think this is very important. Have we, changed our procedures? Do we really, put in some different spanner in the wheel to see, find out something is going wrong or not? And that is, I think, very important, because, you need to be, non-predictable, so that, you become audit as a process becomes a deterrent for frauds. So from that perspective, it is very important. And The second thing is about looking at this particular thing. Now, for example, when you look at this particular picture, now if I ask you whether the person is a owner or a driver of this sporty car, what will you say? How many of you will say that he's the owner of the car, and how many of you will say the driver of the car? Maybe if we can take a poll, we could have seen. Maybe there's a lot of people, because wherever I've shown this, a lot of people say he looks to be a owner of the car, right? But if you see the reality, it is he is neither the owner nor a driver. He is some external person on this, as far as this car is concerned, right? So this is where the issue is. Many times we lack the three-dimensional vision. We look at one particular aspect of the things. Maybe like here you were looking at the reflection and drawing to a conclusion. Similarly, in our audit situation as well, we sometimes look at the situations and we jump to a conclusion. So now this is very important. So we need to change our systems. We need to many times it also happens that when we conduct the audit, we want to understand what was done last time. So we look at the last file and then we want to proceed. Many times, the audit cannot start until you find the last year's file or the last period's file, because, a lot of people want to continue in the same fashion, want to take the same checklist, you want to have the same kind of queries, you want to have the same kind of a conclusion. So from that perspective, we need to keep changing with the times. And I think from that perspective, this is a webinar which is going to, make you think from a different angle. So therefore, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you my vision in terms of what you can do in terms of your data analytics, how you can use artificial intelligence into your data, and what you can do in terms of improving your audit wherever you're doing, so that an opportunity is also available to you to turn your engagement into a forensic investigation. For example, if you are doing, let's say, some kind of a tax audit for some company, and somewhere using this data analysis, if you stumble upon something which is incorrect, suppose you stumble upon something which is where you can find some red flags, I'm sure the client is going to tell you, why don't you investigate further and find out something more about it? And it can turn out to be a separate assignment for you. So this is how you can convert your normal work into an additional work. And this is a line which can be by itself be very lucrative. As I was telling you, frauds are rising. Lot of monies are being lost to frauds by a lot of organizations, and therefore this is a way where you can upgrade yourself. This is how you can enhance yourself from the roles that you have been doing into a different role that comes to you. So in terms of data analytics, as you can see, this is the 8-check formula which I have just put on the screen. And by if you go through each of them, each by itself is also quite something which can be self-explanatory kind of a thing. And this is, if you have to go through this entire 8 points and all that what I have to do, it's a 2 or 3 day process that I have. But right now I just want to touch upon certain aspects of this which can, especially using AI, can you use some data analytics? And from that perspective, I'm going to cover a few of them. So check missing, check duplicates, round numbers, repetitive odd numbers, classification, stratification, single transaction, how to get find outliers. So these are something which we generally do in our data analytics, and I'm sure if those of you who have covered forensic accounting certification course or elsewhere, some things of the others might have been already covered. So 2 or 3 things I'm going to show you or talk to you. One is, how do you use AI? The previous speaker, I think Dayan Nivashi, was talking about 300 GB of data that he has got, and many times when you get a data like this, these are all kind of data. There will be PDF, there will be structured, unstructured data, there will be some databases that you will get and all that. So how do you deal with unstructured data? And this is what generally when you are doing, especially in investigation, you face this problem, because in audit you generally get data what you want because you can demand and you can get it. But when you are doing any investigations, most of the time you are faced with a situation where a lot of things are not available to you. You ask 10 things, maybe out of that only 1 thing is available. That too with a very difficulty, certain things can be obtained. And most of the time that we have seen in investigation is getting bank statements becomes very difficult. And wherever we want some data, especially from a independent source, that data will come in some PDF file, or they give it in some image file, where again that data cannot be analyzed because, if it is a simple PDF file which you can convert, you can get it. But if it is something which cannot be converted easily, this is a major problem. So conversion of, unstructured or structured data into a database where you can start, analyzing it properly becomes a challenging. So I'm going to show you how you can use AI in those situations where it becomes a challenging. So in a data, we call this as a data cleaning process, because cleaning is very important. Let's say you want to look at the data and some bank statement is given to you. As you can see in the screen, some kind of a bank statement is given. Let me open one Excel sheet so that you can see this data, how it is. Okay, so this is the data that is given to you. Now, as you can see, the data is there, like, there are date, there is a narration, there are some amounts that is coming up and all. But, this is not in a position where you can, analyze this data. So how do you clean this data? So traditionally, we have been cleaning this on some basis, and, you spend days in, cleaning this and making it in a format which you want. So I'm going to quickly show you how this can be done very easily using certain AI tools that is available. So one of the thing is, when you want to clean the data, can we extract something which is seen very commonly? So for example, you start with something like extracting of dates. Now dates are very common because any bank statement will always start with a date. So if you can date, and the dates are always in a particular format, because if it is coming from a PDF file, it will be in particular format. So looking at that format, whether you can do that, and when we are doing this, now Excel also has incorporated something like a Python. Now, Python is a language which deals with unstructured data. Now, again, I'm not something which is very tech savvy or to understand and writing Python codes and things like that. So here now I'm taking advantage of AI to, find out certain Python codes which can be, used very conveniently with Excel, because Excel, I'm sure everyone is working with that. So I'm going to use Excel as a base and use others as add-ons which with the AI. So here, using a Copilot prompt, I was, we can write some kind of prompt like this, right? You say write a pattern in MS Excel. Now, a regular expression regex is a Python code, right? So I want to write a regex extraction to extract dates. And here, what I'm doing is, now this is another challenge before I go there. The challenge is, most of the time, you have a data, but you cannot give it to the AI, because, AI means you need to upload the data externally. And there, you are again hindered by confidentiality problems. So client data you cannot upload elsewhere. So then what do you do? In that case, what you can do is you can take only the first one of the lines and then give it to, and maybe you can change certain things in that so that, the confidentiality is not compromised anywhere. Maybe some names, etc. you can change. So here I've changed that. And then as a first line, I'm giving it to the AI to say that, okay, using this pattern, can you write a code for me? So the prompt has given me this answer that yes, you can write a code like this. So it has given me some kind of a code which can be straight away put in Excel. And if you want an explanation, there's explanation also which is possible, which tells you in case you want to know how this code has been generated. And I can then just simply, copy this code and then use it in my Excel. So I'll just go to the Excel and I'll show you how I can just Control V. Can you see over here? I'll just put some. Yeah. So using this, if you see this is a code which I have just copied and pasted over here. I don't know how this thing is used. I'm just copying and pasting it to generate and find out what is the date. So it has found the date from this particular thing. Now, if you see in this or any bank statement, generally they carry one or two additional dates, like, one can be the date of transaction, one can be value date, and so. So here, what I'll do is I will just go and put a comma, and then there are certain things like, if you want first match 0, all matches 1, capture groups of first match, etc., 2, etc. So I'll just put 1. So it will capture both the dates. Can you see over here? It has captured both the dates. So just by putting this code, and I can copy this code down straight away and use it. So I can just copy it down. And I've got 2 dates for each one of them. So if there are more dates, so I can just put, let's say this is date number 1, this is date number 2, and I need to also find out whether there are more, because there is a possibility that there are more dates elsewhere, right? So therefore, I will try and see whether there are more dates. Like date 4, there are no dates, right? So date 4, nothing is there. Maybe date 3, if at all any is there. Yes, if there are dates over here. Now, if you see in these transactions, in this particular row number, there are 3 dates which are given. One is the date of the transaction. There's some other date which is coming in the narration, and then there's a value date. So therefore, instead of 2, I have 3 dates to tackle with. So what I will do is I will try and capture the third date as, let's say, date value. So here I will just say is equal to, if I will just say is blank D2. So if this D2 is blank is equal to true, then I will pick up my date from date 2. Otherwise, it will be D3. So using this, I can straight away find out, for example, wherever the dates were blank over here, I mean, where dates were not blank, it has to make sure that it is picking up properly, right? So it has picked up over here. It has not picked up over here. It is blank is true. Oh, it is picked up something else. 1 minute, sorry. I think there's some formula error. It has to be D2, not D3. So if you make a mistake in the formula, you can probably check it properly. Okay. So as you can see over here, the date number 3, which is 26 of 7, is picked up properly, whereas date 2 was 25th, which is a part of a narration. So this is how you can create 2 dates for you. So I have extracted using this Python principle 2 dates. Now the next one is to find out the amounts, because date is something which you have done. Now can I find out amounts, values from the database? So again, I write the same kind of a prompt, and from that prompt, I get another regex formula, extract formula, which talks about how to identify amounts. So I can again copy that straight away and paste it in Excel. So I will just go there and maybe paste in Excel in a particular thing. I will write over here. I'll just put some color so that it can be identified properly. Okay, so using this formula, I have been able to capture the amount. So I'll say amount 1. Okay, and again, as you know, I can just put with a comma 1 so that I want to find out all the instances and not restrict to 1. So if there are 2 amounts, and generally there will be 2 amounts, because there will be always a debit or transaction amounts or credit amount, and there will be a balance. So 2 amounts will be there, so which I'm trying to capture, and maybe I want to capture and make sure that are there any more such things. So okay, so I will let's take number 4, so it's blank. Number 3 also is blank. So there are only 2 amounts which are there, and as you can see, you have captured both the amounts. So now from the database, what I've done is I've captured dates, I've captured amounts. Now I want to capture narration. So what is my narration going to be? My narration is going to be everything that is there in the raw data minus the dates and minus the amounts, because that is something which I have captured. So what I can do is I can write another code for which I will tell the Copilot prompt to have a regress replacement formula. That means it is a regular expression by replacing the formula, where you will eliminate whatever you have got already. Okay, so if you write this prompt, again the prompt gives you a particular code. The code is something which you can just copy paste it in Excel and use that code. So this I'm going to, let's say, do it over here. And as you can see, I'll just put some color to it. Maybe we don't need this comments. I'll just remove this. So this is my description code. So as you can see, this the description which is there, which is going to be all the text which is there in the raw column in A2 minus all the columns that you have already got, right? And then based on that, I can then generate my database. So here I write date, let's say this is transaction. For example, I can write, let's say transaction date. Then I can write over here value date. Then I can write narration or description. Then I can write debit amount, credit amount, and balance. Okay, so now using this, I can do it very easily. What I'll do is I'll just reduce this column so that we can see only the important ones. Yeah. So what is my transaction date is going to be? Now here, because the date is not in a date format, it is in a text format. So the first column, which is the date value, date 1. So I'll capture from here the date value, and then I can format it in a particular way. So I'll just say formatting it in a customs to say that I want in a format DD, MMM, YYY format. Okay, so I've got it over here. So second date is going to be my column in E. So I'll just copy this over here and I'll say E2. I'm just going a little fast, but I think you'll get a gist of what I'm doing, right? So this is a date column. Narration column is going to be very simple. It is something which is already there, which is description. And if I don't want those additional spaces, I can trim it. Why it is giving? Let's keep it over here. I don't know why that trim is not working, but there is a function trim which can eliminate the blanks. Now this is going to be tricky. How do I get debit, credit, and balance? Because the balance is something which can be very easily. It is something which is again, because this is text, I can just pick up from the second value, the second amount. So this is going to be easy. Now the thing is, how do I find whether it is debit or credit? Now here what I can do is, I can just skip the first row for a moment. I can go to the second, and over here, I can just write to check whether my balance is less than the earlier balance. If the balance is less, I can do a minus between them also, or I can pick up from the value which is in amount 1. So here, depending upon that, I can pick up the value, or in the same way, I can write it in the credit also, where if N3 is greater than N2, then it should pick up the value from F3. Okay, so here what I need to also put value true and value false, which is going to be 0. So here I'm going to put value false is going to be 0. And then I can copy this and I can copy this. So this way I can construct the entire sheet very conveniently, very fast, using what data was given to me, right? So this was the raw data which was given to me, and the other data is something which I have generated. So what I can do is I will just hide this part so that if I want that, I can get it back anytime. So this is on column A, what you see is the raw data, and this is the way you have generated your balance sheet. So using this concept of Python and using AI tools, you can work around and get something for your the end purpose that you are looking for. Now this is very important because here I'm not sharing anything with the external parties. So my confidentiality is also not compromised in any way. So this is how I can work very easily. Now let me go forward from here. I don't know whether any questions are there, then we can pick up. Priyaji, anyone is giving any questions? Are people there with me? Any thought you are getting?
Yes, sir. Just let me check if there are any questions.
Okay, otherwise we can take questions, answers later on as well. So this is how you can.
Later on.
Yeah. Okay, so let me go through the next one. So this is how you can, work around Python, AI. You can use it to construct your database. Another way AI can be used is where, nowadays what's happening is, especially in investigations, when we are, discussing with the clients and when we have to, give certain presentations and all. Now this is we are into an era of packaging and presentations, right? How do you, reach out to the people? And from that perspective, especially at a higher level, if you want to, reach out to the C-level people and all, you need to really do something differently. You may write a very good report, but many times what happens is, after all, something that is given in a text form becomes boring to a very large extent. Of course, this is very important because ultimately you need to give a report. A report needs to be there because for all the purpose of record keeping and all, it is required. But to make a dent in front of any one person to be noticed on what you have done, you need to really what can I say? You need nearly to develop yourself, or you need to graduate yourself from a normal report writing. Of course, the reports can be very nicely written, no doubt. But if you can make it in a visual format, in a way where because today everything is all based on visual this thing. Even news that you read today. How many of you read newspaper in the news print media, and then how many people of you look at news on your social media, right? The social media is popular because it is all about presentation, video creating and all that. So can we create that kind of a situation where where we need to talk to people, and wherever we have done in the past, where we have done a work and where we have created these kind of videos and passed on, it has reached to a very large to the highest authority, and the highest authority has then taken very interest in that work because he found that something very useful, and he wants to discuss more with us, and then he has called for a meeting with us. Otherwise, which I think in our normal way, it would have never reached him, and he would have never taken those kind of interest. So I'm going to show you what we did in those cases, how we create those kind of a situation, how is a report that you can create, where you can use AI into all these things. So for this, I'm going to show you how you can use AI into audit and investigations. And for this, again, there's a 8-step process that I would recommend, and which you can use it. And again, this is not something which is a rocket science. It is something which we have been doing normally. So the process starts with gathering information. I think that is something which is very important. I mean, any audit, anything that you do, your first step is always to collect the relevant information, right? So this goes on. So you do that. So you first collect information. After that, you analyze the information depending upon your domain strength about whether you're auditing, investigating, whatever data analysis, ratio, looking at the documentation. So you analyze from whatever perspective you can using the processes that you have been developed into, or wherever you have planned your work. And after that, you can take certain help of certain tools, and you can leverage those AI tools to widen your base, understand a little bit more into all those things. So whatever you have done, always check with AI whether you can do differently, what else you can do. And if required, come back to step 2. So you can toggle between step 2 and step 3 to find a little bit more about what you are doing and what needs to be done or what can be done, right? So once you have done that, then you can develop a script, or this is something where you can traditional way you can be putting a report. So in the report, what you do, you put your structured information, you put your findings, conclusions, your way forward, and limitations, etc. So that is a report that you have done. So if you can develop that into a script language where you pick up a few important lines and develop that into some kind of a storyboard. So you do that. So these are the first 2, 3, 4 things which you can do, which anyway you're going to do in your normal audits as well. And the next 4 steps is something which you can take it to a different level of creating a AV kind of a presentation. So here, using some AI tools which are available, you can create audio visual particular tools, And once you create that, you can, the AI will do it in its own way, whatever its understanding is, and the way it is generated over there. There are a lot of other issues. There are hallucinations, problems that you keep on coming. So you need to take care of all that. So once you have done that, you can refine that AV tool again with formal explanations. You can add title, bullets, highlights. So you can refine it to make it proper. After that, you can embellish it with more visuals, images, chart, documents, whichever you feel are important from which explains your story in to the right audience. So you can enhance those with the proper messaging system. And once you do that, you can review and finalize. And in that process, if you need to go back to step one to fill up any particular cracks or any gaps that you see, maybe you need to go back and then you can need to complete. And once you do that, I think the most important thing is to remember that, see, we are all children of ICA, right? ICA is our mother body, and the mother body also say ICAI. So AI comes later on. Before that, it comes IC. IC meaning the human element in that. So yeah, as our institute name also suggests, the human element is very important. So the final judgment that you get it before the AI is the HI, which is going to be very important. So from that perspective, you should, whatever you do, because as I was saying, in the world of AI, there is a lot of hallucinations that is happening. There are a lot of ways in which the entire AI thinking can be biased or can be made biased, and there are people working against that entire thing. So there are a lot of other shortcomings of AI. So you need to also keep that in mind and use your human intelligence to find out and get a final judgment towards that. So after you put all these things, I'm going to show you one particular case where we did this and what kind of output it generates. And so this, let's take a case, for example, in this particular thing. Now, as you know, a lot of banks, they keep receiving stock statements from borrowers, right? And these stock statements, every month or every quarterly, they are supposed to file. And a lot of these people, they keep filing and they send it to the banks. And what do the banks do with this thing? It is merely a document which just goes in one particular file. At the most, these are used for recalibrating certain DP limits and all. Otherwise, I don't think banks or anyone, even the auditors of banks, ever really go in details to look at that stock statements, right? So now, if you're using AI, can you pick up any one particular stock statement? Let's say I'm going to talk about one particular stocks of ABC Chemicals, which is given. So let's say it is available in Excel sheet. And let me just show you that Excel sheet, how it is. Yeah, so if you see over here, this is something which is normal, a stock statement comes where you have some material code description, whether it is hazardous goods or not, whether it is acid, heat resistance, what is the unit of measurement, quantities, stocks, valuation, value, etc. So let's say I've just picked up a few of them. Let's say these are 50 items, and then there is certain amount of the stock statement, right? So now looking at that stock statement, there are certain complications which are there along with that storage. For example, in this particular ABC Chemicals, what I was told was that there are separate warehouses to stock hazardous goods and non-haz goods. So there was has go down and non-haz go down for that. Then for each one of them, they were it was in a parking stacks kind of this thing, like a bookshelf. So at 1+5 level. So if you just see over here, so this is how the stocking was happening. So there were steel racks and there were 5 different levels in which it was stacked. Now, materials are stored in either drums or sacks or certain bags, right? So they were there, and because it has to be picked up and put it on a higher levels, so it was done with a forklift. So these are all kept on a pallets. So everything was kept on pallets so that it becomes easy for movements, etc. And then there is a warehouse management system which tracks in which particular rack it is kept, etc. and all that. For stock monitoring, each one was kept in a separate location. And then there are some other restrictions, wet restrictions, whether it was depending upon acids or heat resistance, where it has to be kept, at which particular level, etc. So there were all complications with that. So using all that complications, so all that when it was fed to an AI, again, here we are taking AI not in terms of just one tool, but you can use multiple tools. Like for creating video, you can take the help of some 2-3 different AI. For data analysis, you can talk about something else. For finding something else, you can look at, like, for example, in this particular case, I have used the Copilot and ChatGPT for data analysis. For video, I have used some 2-3 different softwares. So using that, this has been created. So let me just show you what kind of output it can generate, and whether if this output can be sent to at various levels. It can be used for board presentations level. It can be used at audit committee levels. It can be used even for internal training. Supposing you're training, so let's say you are a part of some organization and you want to train your staff, and then this thing you can use for training purposes also. So those kind of things can be used very conveniently. So let me show you what output this can generate and how analysis can be used in this. I hope the sound is visible, audible to you. If not, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll have to start and think about it. Yeah, is the sound visible?
The objective of this exercise.
Hello?
It is audible, sir.
Yeah, okay.
Exercise is to ascertain whether the stock statement provided to a bank by the borrower, that is ABC Chem, could be incorrect. One way is to check whether the warehouse could actually store the inventory considering the various storage criteria. For this, let's understand the standard operating processes. ABC Chemicals maintains chemical inventories in 2 separate warehouses. One designated for hazardous (HAZ) materials, and another for non-hazardous (non-HAZ) substances. Each warehouse is equipped with steel racking systems resembling bookshelf comprising of ground plus 5 levels. There are 10 rows of racks per warehouse. Row 1 starts against one wall, followed by paired rows, row 2 and 3, row 4 and 5, and so on, with row 10 touching the opposite wall. An 8-foot aisle separates each row, to provide adequate space for forklift movements, etc. Each row contains 8 vertical partitions, totaling to 80 shelves per level. Across 6 levels results into 480 unit shelves per warehouse. Every shelf is dimensioned to accommodate a single pallet with material stacked up to 5 feet in height. All products are stored on tray pallets to facilitate efficient pick and place operations by forklifts. The ground level racks have no weight restrictions, as they are directly supported on the floor. Max load: L1 and 2 4,000 kgs, L3 and 4 3,000 kgs, L5 2,000 kgs, with a tolerance of plus 5%. Warehouse stock consists of bags, drums, and sacks. Standard weights: bags 25 kilograms each, drums 220 kilograms each, and sacks 100 kilograms each. The standard maximum pallet capacity is 12 drums, 18 sacks, or 120 bags. Pallets may contain partial loads as well. These are designed to fit in the 5 feet height in each rack, including headspace for lifts, etc. Hazardous materials must only be stored in the hazardous warehouse. However, non-hazardous items may be kept in the hazardous warehouse if necessary. Materials flagged as heat-resistant should not be placed on levels 4 and 5. Materials classified as acids must be stored exclusively on ground-level shelves due to potential leakage risks. Each unit shelf must store only a single material code, that is, mix codes cannot be stored in together. Inventory statement as on the 31st of December 2025 is given in attached Excel sheet.
Overview of pallets. Total pallets required has 391 and non-has 439, that is total 830. As against total capacity of 960, that is 480 into 2. Therefore apparent utilization of approximately 86% shows a healthy picture. Examination of total weight indicates that utilization of capacity in has and non-has warehouses are approximately 60 to 70%, which too is well within limits. Acid stocks indicates pallets requirements of 70 and 68 in has and non-has. Heat-resistant stocks requirement are 281 and 319 pallets. Red flags. The requirements exceed the capacity of ground to L3 levels of 320 shelves, indicating negative shelves of 31 and 67 in HAS and non-HAS respectively. Weight constraints impact. Large proportion of HAS inventory consists of drums which cannot be stored on upper levels due to weight limits, resulting in overloading of lower levels, that is ground to L2, thus underutilization of upper levels. Conclusion based on the above analysis. The reported inventory levels exceed the practical storage capacity of the warehouses when operational and safety constraints are applied, or there is serious non-compliance with prescribed storage norms. The analysis indicates overall overstatement can be in region of 30 to 40%. Recommendations. Conduct physical verification of inventory, particularly surprise verification, is highly recommended. Reconcile stock records with physical capacity constraints to simulate the inventory storage conditions.
So this is how you can create a report based on the data that is available. And once you feed in, this is something which takes a few minutes to create and all. Of course, when you want to research, it may take a little time for you to do a research. But once you do that, this is something which can happen very fast. And analysis and recommendation, etc., can be all given. Of course, you can use your human intelligence also later to see whether you agree with that or not. But this is how you can create using AI tools today, what is available. And this is something which can, create a good impact on the clients. I don't know whether we can take any questions so far. Priya, is it possible to take any questions right now on this, whatever you have discussed so far?
No, sir. Just give me a second.
I don't know whether lines are open for anyone to, ask questions and put it, or.
How AI enhances RPA internal audit?
See, there is what I would say is that AI is generative, right? So we are still in a second stage of AI. AI needs to also come out and go forward from here. So right now, getting something very quickly at your fingertips may not be very easy for you to get it and all. See, there are two things what is very important from AI perspective. For AI to learn, someone needs to also teach. So unless you teach, it will not learn. And most of the problem with the AI is it's a chicken and egg story. Like, whether there will be a chicken first or egg first. And this is where the AI is generating. And because, people are not, putting, because, when you are working on any bank or any for any investigation also, or in any audits also, you generally don't want to put your client's data into AI, this thing. And therefore, AI is still struggling to get a good, proper data. And whatever data it gets is only something in trickles that is given by a lot of people, which may not be correct. And what people are doing is they're using AI, but they're using some other tools, and they keep taking from all the tools, and they work on that, and then those actual fast conclusions are never shared with the tool, and this is where the AI is lacking currently. And from that perspective, you will never get something which is very quickly available in a consumable form. So this is not like a fast food where it's like a machine, you put the money and then you get something which you can eat very easily. It is still in a stage where it is kind of a half baked, half cooked kind of a thing. So you need to go to the market and you buy something which is half cooked. You need to then take it home, and then depending upon what you like, you need to put it in a particular oil or particular use of spices, etc., and all that. So we are still in that stage. So from that perspective, whatever you need, you talk to AI and try to see whether you are getting it. And once we have a maturity level of AI, which may take some time, maybe you will get little more into something which is very concrete, where you can straight away start applying. So far, I think we'll have to wait for that thing to happen till then.
Okay. So next is, what are the key challenges for CA firms in adopting AI and analytics in foreign assignments?
So as I said, the key challenge is, the major challenges is confidentiality of information. So, how do you put that information is going to be very extremely challenging. As I showed you in this bank statement also, maybe it is possible that you can share the entire bank statements, and today there are tools available which will convert that bank statement into a proper database format and give it to you. But you will never share that because of these problems which I told you. And therefore, I think this is a major challenge for you. And I think apart from that, AI is only enhancing your skill sets. So right now, I see more advantages to you from a thinking perspective. Supposing you are doing particular thing, maybe without giving the client's name, without giving any major data, if you pose some questions to AI, the AI can throw up some solutions, or they can throw up a different way of thinking. And maybe, they might give you, let's say, some 10 or 15 different approaches, which out of that you may have thought only of 3 or 4 of them, but it will give you another 10. And those 10 can also, make you think on another 15 or another 20 things. So overall, you benefit from that perspective. So that is why we are using AI today.
Okay. Next is, how can CAs ensure data integrity and chain of custody while handling digital evidence?
Yeah, so now this is something very different. This is from a more general kind of this thing. But whenever you get a data, you should make a record of, you should have some log of from where you are getting data, and especially when you're investigating. Initial period, it becomes very easy, but as you keep maturing with the investigation, you will get data from various sources. So it can come from the client itself, it can come from some whistleblower in a very innocuous way. You may get data from other customers, from vendors, from banks, and all that. So you should make a log of wherever you are getting a data, and then store that data properly at one particular location. And especially when you're looking at a digital data, there are digital experts who work in a particular way where as Mr. Dayanivas was telling us, he's now going to create a lab, etc., and all that. So now those specific tools also have that kind of this thing that, when they work with the data, they extract and make an image of the data without writing anything on the subject hard disk and all that. And that is very important, because you should not tamper with the original data. So there are certain tools available. So we need to have a separate chapter on digital forensics and how this can be done. But in a short, I would say that whenever you get something, if it is digital data, it's better not to touch that. It is better to be touched only by experts. And any data that is given to you, you should ensure that you are getting it on a separate new hard disk, and which you can then replicate into at least you should get 2 or 3 copies, so that one copy you keep as it is that you have got, and then whatever analysis you are doing, you are making on the second or third copies of that. Or maybe if you have a team of 3 or 4 people and everyone is working, maybe you can distribute another 4 hard disks to all your 4 people, so that they are independently working, and one of the disk is kept with the original data as you have received it. So that is how you should keep logging it at every particular ways. So depending upon what that data is, you need to take this thing. If it is coming by email, it's very simple, because then the email shows the date and time of certain thing that is being given to you. But if it is not by email, you should create this kind of documentation.
Okay. What tools and techniques are used for data extraction from ERP system in financial databases?
See, there are various tools that are available. One of the tools are basically the tools given in the ERP system itself, because most of the time, they throw up a data which can be easily converted, or in some CSV file they give it, or so many of them give it in Excel straight away. So you can take it in Excel straight away from there. Otherwise, there are certain tools. For example, there is one crystal report tools which is available with SAP and all. Of course, that requires some kind of a knowledge about using that particular tool. But these kind of tools are also available, which has some kind of out-of-box integration with the ERP system. But if to extract those data, you should understand from where you are getting the data. So the knowledge of that ERP system is paramount in that case, because you need to know from which table to be extracted what and all that. So that will require some kind of technical knowledge. So if you have that technical knowledge, you can use those tools. Otherwise, I think the simple thing is to take Excel dumps. If it is a very large dumps, you can chop it down month-wise or year-wise or something like that, and you can take that. And once you have a large database, I have certain things which I can show you in my next phase, where I will talk about so how you can analyze those data. So you can do it from that perspective.
Okay. As of now, these are the questions that I have. This is the
Okay.
last question. Key steps involved in data acquisition, cleansing, and validation in a forensic assignment.
I think I already talked about it. Taking data, you need to log and make sure that you are creating a record. Take it from a valid source. You should identify the source always, because when you give evidence, you need to also show from what source it has been gathered. So from that perspective, always document data. And when you are analyzing, cleaning, the process will depend upon how good or bad that data is. After you take the data, you need to validate certain things because you are not sure whether you have got complete or not. So have some kind of a summation of that data to find out whether the data is complete or not. Because especially in certain situations, for example, if you are working in IBC cases and all, you may get data which you don't even know which is final data or not. It might be some data which was in a process, and generally they will want to derail your processes, and therefore they will give you wrong data and all that. So you need to be extra careful in those situations. So I think who is giving your data is very important, and you need to understand from which source it is coming, how many people were involved, whether it is directly from the data engineers to you, or there are middlemen in the process which may compromise with the data. So all those things I think we need to take care of. Cleaning is, again, as I said, depending upon whether you can read it and whether what it is. Sometimes you need to clean it. Sometimes you need to process the data also in your format if you require. So you need to do that. So that is all that is required. So these are all logical process. There is no what is a standardized thing to say that, okay, you need to do X, Y, or Z. It is something where you need to be mindful in terms of what circumstances you are, how you are getting things, how much you can depend, what kind of a time disposal you will have at your command, and how much of the economic sense is made to you. I think all that put together will be something that will drive especially in investigations.
Right.
Okay,
you can continue with the session. Now the questions will come. Then I'll ask.
So we have about 30-35 minutes. I want to touch upon one very important way of a data analysis, and that is Benford's law. And generally, as you've been asking questions, how do you work with data, and especially huge data? So I will also, want to show you how Benford's law can be used in a situation with some new concepts of machine learning, which have been used to analyze big data analysis. So using those concepts, what you can do and all, right? So from that perspective, I'll just very cursorily touch on Benford's law, because this is something, otherwise it will take a lot of time to explain this, and then I will not be able to talk about those other concepts and all. So I'm going to go a little, fast on this. In case you have understood about this Benford's law, it will be very useful. If not, you can go through some of the net. If you can go to our Chetan Dalal's website on YouTube also, there is one Benford's law related one particular video that is available. So you can go through that also to get a little bit more on this. So very quickly, what is Benford's law is, this is again a sampling tool. And many times, when you are faced with a situation where you have to, investigate certain things, or you have to audit certain things, and the data is very huge. So how do you find out certain small samples? And again, when you talk about sampling, again, it could be something where, if you go to the traditional way, you will find some samples which you are just picking up at random or something like that. But here we are talking about risk-based sample. And the risk-based that we are going to look at is whether any samples which have not gone in terms of what Benford was saying in terms of his frequencies, and those frequencies can be used for us to generate a sample. So let me show you how it can be done and what it can do. Now, for example, let's say someone gives you some, let's say 5-6 check payments, right? Or some bank payments. So in this particular case, there are payments, as you can see, 125,000, 76,000, so on. So if you can isolate the first left digit of each one of them, right, which could be 1, 7, 4, 8, 9, as you can see on the screen. Now, if I have to ask you that what is the probability that this first number being 1, and so far we have been all being guided by only a law of probability, and therefore we'll say that, okay, for this number 1 to be 1 is going to be 1 out of 9 times, because every number has equal chance of appearing. and therefore it will be 1/9, which is 11.11%. Now this is where Benford says is it will not be 11.11%, but according to him, it will be 30.1%. So that is almost 3 times that what we would have thought otherwise. So this is where Benford says that each number has a different frequency of appearing. And in his analysis, he has given different frequencies for each one of them. Like 1 can be 30% time, 2 can be 17%, 3 can be 12, and so on. So the last digit 9 can be only 4% or 4.6%. So what he says is that for the lower digit number like 1 to appear is almost 6 times more the probability than what 9 can appear. And if you see, the first 3 digits itself is going to be almost something like 60% in terms of this basket of the entire thing. So what he says is the lower digit number comes very often than the higher digits number. So now what is the relevance to us as auditors or investigators is something very simple. Now let's say we are working on, let's say, looking at 1,000 documents. Let's say you are doing some purchase or some bank payments. There 1,000 documents are there. Now what he says is if you are working on 1,000 documents, you can expect 30.1% or 301 vouchers to start with 1, 176 with 2, 125 with 3, and so on. So once you know what you can expect, what you can do is you can compare that with actual and then find out what is going to be a variance. So what they say is that once you do that, and the variance is going to be 0 because somewhere there will be a excess variance, somewhere there could be a shortages. So what Benford says is if you can look at the excess variances, because the excess variances is where the numbers should not have been there and those have been already sitting over there. So if you can go through that bucket where there is an excess major variance, you will be able to, put your hand in that bucket, and that bucket will show you that there's something wrong. Because, for example, in this particular 3, what Benford was saying was that you should expect 125 vouchers, whereas actually there are 146 vouchers. That means there are 21 vouchers which are more over there, which have come in that bucket because someone has tampered with something to bring them vouchers from some different, maybe in some case like 8 or 9 into 3. So if you are able to get that sample of those or a few samples out of that 21, you can examine that to find out how did it travel over there, right? And it can travel because of 2 or 3 different reasons why it can go there. One, it can happen maybe due to some normal situation. It is not always that, it will be a fraud. It can be where some human influence that it has come, which can be stemming from something like a policy decision, for example. So there was some kind of a policy decision taken that, okay, like for example, if you say a Bata shoe company, this is a policy decision that the rate is always something 99.99, right? So therefore, there is a particular pattern in which it is set. And therefore, if you do that, because of that reason of that pattern, certain numbers will change. So it can happen due to a policy decision, or it can be happening due to some kind of a mistake or some kind of a bug in the software, or there's some kind of a problem in the system. So it can happen because of that, or it can happen due to fraud also. So in either cases of this, you as auditor are interested whether there is a policy decision, whether there is a mistake which needs to be rectified, or there's a fraud. So in either of these 3 situations, you need to look at that. So Benford says that if you just sample this in this fashion, this is very easy for you to get a risk-based sample. So out of 1,000 vouchers, you will end up with only, let's say, 146 vouchers. And that also with some other tools, you can still, reduce that sample to find out something which is a sample which is where it is a good appetite for you that you have for the numbers. So this is how it can be done. So let me just show you how quickly this can be done and it can be used, right? So I'm going to use the stock market data. So I'm going to use the yesterday's data, which is available. And I'm going to show you how this can be easily done. And again, because, this is a data which is there in the public system, you can also pick it up and you can do that. And so I wanted to show you how this can be easily done. For example, if I take the last year, now if you see data, what is the trade data of 29th of April, that is yesterday's closing. And then it has like what is the ISN numbers, what is the opening price, closing price, trading. So there are some, if you see over here, there is trading volume, there is a trades executed, and what is the amount of value of trade. So supposing if I have to use, let's say over here, and I say, I want to isolate the left function. So I'll say this is for a value, and for this value, I will use first digit, right? So I'm using a value first digit. So here, using a left function, I can very easily identify what is the first leftmost digit. And I can do some analysis over here. So I say first digit analysis. So I'll say 1, 2, and going up to 9. And I'll just do some quick things. Maybe, if it is something which you can relate to, it's very easy that because I'm going to use some formula. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a formula name, which will be my top row. So whatever is like value of f digit is my top name given. So that becomes my formula identifying name. And over here, I want to find out what is my actual count. So using a countif function, which you can otherwise also do using a pivot table. So countif function, I'm going to use value of first digit for finding how many times 1 has appeared, how many times up to 9 it has appeared. And then I can find out what is the percentage, actual percentage, which is going to be 1407 divided by, I can format this into percentages. And then it will be 100%. And then I will use to check with Benford's law percentages, which are again, I've just given it over here, but these are available on net. You can just Google and get these percentages. So very easy. And as you can see, these percentages are very close to what Benford is saying. Like over here, he was saying 30%, so you're 29, 70, 11. Can you see the downward trend? Maybe I can put a okay. So this is how what you see in the bar chart are my actual numbers, and the red line is Benford percentage. Can you see the actuals are following the Benford percentages? Now let me show you the magic of this particular trick of this law. Now instead of there's a value figures, if I'm picking not from value, I'm taking number of trades from P, right? So I just take P for example over here and copy this. Can you see still the chart remains as it is? Now instead of P, supposing if instead of not P, if I'm picking up from somewhere else, maybe if I'm picking up from, let's say, high price, I2. Can you see it is still in that particular shape? So this is how, Benford's law, if you take this as an example, this is something which can give you a little confidence that this law is something which really works. And therefore, this is something which can be very easily used. And then how do you use this? Now, that is something that we need to look at. So I'm just going to remove this chart for a moment. And what I need to do is I need to find out where is the difference is. The difference is between actual minus Benford's law. Let me format it a little bit so that such that the difference should be 0, right? So there'll be some. Now, how do I find in which particular thing I need to go into? So for that, I need to find out the deviation. So my deviation is going to be the difference divided by Benford's law, because these numbers are quite different. Like first is 29% and 30%, and the next going to 4%. So therefore, there are unequal comparisons. And to make it equal, what we need to do is we need to divide the difference with the Benford's law, so that you can find out, and then whatever is more than 5%, you can take this as a something where you need to look at. So I'll just use the conditional formatting to find something which is more than 5%. So in this case, number 4 and number 9 is something which is more than 5%, right? So what it says is, now if you take samples from this particular bucket, which is number 4 and 5, it is something where you can still work with. Now the problem is, if I take number 4 and 5, it will amount to something like almost 759 records. And 759 records is not my good sample size, because I will need sample size which is not more than, let's say, 70, 80 of that. So what I can do is, instead of value numbers, I can also look at the volume first digit, and use the same kind of a volume. So I'll create that formula, and this I can just copy this, because otherwise all my things have been set. Okay, so here let's say I talk, this is my first digit for value. So this is my first digit for volume. So here, instead of here, I'll say volume first digit. And copy this down. Otherwise, all my formula is otherwise set as it is. And over here, I need to divide by 24. Okay. So here, the deviation is in number 1, right? So what I can do is I can then also find out maybe for number of trade executed. So I'll say trade executed, first digit, which can be left. And then copy this formula down. And here, I can use trade executed. And while I'm typing, can you see it is already selected over here, this particular, so that I know that this is working, formula is working properly. I think it is doing something on its own, so I have to be a little careful. 37. Okay. So now, as you can see, I've done it on 3 levels. One is I've done on value levels, where number 4 and number 9 is out of sequence. On volume, I've done for, and then the number 1 is going out of sequence, more than 5% deviation. And executed trade, again, it is the digit number 1. So based on that, what I can do is I can filter out those documents where all these 3 conditions are going. Like for value 1, it was 4 and 9, right? So I can just select 4 and 9 over here. Then digit 2, I can select which is number 1. And executed trade is also number 1. So likewise, I've now got, can you see over here how many sample size I've got? I got about 99 samples. So now 99 samples is good. And this is a sample which has been generated with Benford's law, where the thing is not very used, or where the numbers were not following the Benford's law in that particular frequencies. And therefore, this is how we can use that. And Benford has not only given you for first digit, he has given you for second digit, third digit, first and second, first and third. So he has given you various scenarios. So depending upon how big your data is, you can use the various scenarios to generate this kind of a data. Okay. So since we have another 10 minutes, let me just show you how you can work with big data in this. Now, See, for the big data, there are certain statistical approaches that one need to check, right? So the one is, we have the traditional approaches like, getting into random numbers, top-bottom approach, the Pareto principle, and all the other statistical like mean, mode, variation, standard deviation, etc. But now, with this new formats, and especially with the machine learning, the big data analysis that they work with this assemble kind of a principle. So this ensemble principles is all about grouping. It's not only taking it in one. It is grouping that with various formats and doing it. So there are two major approaches that one is called random forest method, and one is a bootstrapping or a bagging method. So let me quickly talk to you about this. Again, these are very simple terms to understand, though it sounds little strange. But these are very simple and it can be very conveniently used, and I'll show you how to do that. So, for example, when you talk about forest, what is forest? Forest is ultimately a place where there are a lot of trees, right? There are different types of trees, different shapes of trees, etc. So, same thing is with our database also. If you see our data is also of different shapes, sizes, and all that, right? It's a very complex kind of this thing. When you talk about ERP, there's a huge databases of various things, right? So it is like compared to a forest, there are many, trees of different shapes and sizes. So what this particular principle says is, can you derive some kind of a module of working with a different tree? So let's say a particular tree 1 can be of a different module. So you can have module 1.1 and 1.2. You can further break down into module 1.1.1, 1.1.2, and so on. That 1.1.1 can be further, brought down to another module. So you can have, like, you have trees with various branches. So you create that kind of tree, you can create various branches and you can have various modules. Similarly, you can have another tree and the modules for that. You can have another tree, which is like, tree number 3, and you can keep going on to different trees. And then you look at the entire holistically to take a final instance. And how do you do that? So let me explain to you by way exactly what we have done. Okay. So this is a forest approach or a random forest approach, as they say. And another approach which they talk about is a bootstrapping or a bagging approach. Now here the approach is something like this. For example, if I'm looking at one database, let's say some sales database, right? Now here I've given you some sales database where there is only some kind of a reference number and total sales. And as you can see, there are records, there are 357,000 records. Now, maybe, I don't have appetite to, look at this, and it's a huge data. Maybe it is not 357, but 3 million records. Now, it's a humongous records for me to really look at. So what this particular approach says is that you need not look at everything. You can look at certain numbers. For example, I can take any random, only 10,000 records out of that and study that. Okay, so I can study that as loop 1. I can take another 18,000 records as loop 2. I can take another loop 3, loop 4. So I can take different loops. The way you have a loops in a boot. So you have a different loop, and each loop can also you can tighten and loosen that. And then ultimately there's a final one which is at the top, which will stretch all the loops together. So this is how you can create different loop and then you can stretch it together. So this is where this particular philosophy or this approach talks about bootstrapping. So you can use the random forest and a bootstrapping approach both to create something like this. And I can give you an example or analogy of what generally done in exit polls. Have you seen how this exit polls comes? Like say today we have done some 3 or 4 states, and yesterday only some exit polls have been there. Now how do they create exit polls? They are not going to talk to each and every voter, right? There, let's say if it is a central government formation, in which case there will be 140 crores or maybe 100 crores of people. How do you don't reach out to so many of them? What they do is they pick at random certain cities, certain B class cities, C class cities, certain states at random, and for each one of them again they decide which district to do. Out of each district they go and make sure that they having a equal what do you say, proper representation in terms of gender, in caste, creed, and different types of things, and then they come out with their solution. So similarly, what you can do is in a random forest, you can they choose different areas, geographical areas. You can select, let's say, you also have different databases, like, you may have payroll database, expense, inventory, sales, inventory, and whatever. So all that data you can do. Out of sales also, you may have, let's say, for example, if you have sales and then you have different products, product 1, 2, 3, 4. So in each sales also, there may be different elements in terms of what data you can choose, right? So this can be a part of a random forest. Whereas when you talk about the bagging or a bootstrapping approach, here what we do is we create loops. Like for example, if this total sales, if you take this amount wise, you can create a loop 1 of 10,000 record, loop 2 of 18,000 records, and so on for each one of them. Maybe you can create another loop 2.1, which can be in products. Loop 3.1 can be in product 2. It can be something else. So you can create different loops in your this thing, and then you can put all these things together to understand how this entire thing is done. So let's use this concept in the one that we just was looking at, and let's see how we can work towards that, right? So I have about 5 minutes, so let me quickly show you what can be done. Now, for example, in this Benford's law, we had worked on this. So how can I use the random forest and the bootstrapping approach over here? Now, what I will do is let me just create some space. Here, I'm going to use some random numbers. So I will say random 50. Okay, R&D 50. Now 50 because I want to use 50%. So what I will do is I will use the formula rand between 1 and 2. That means it will select either rand or 2 rand between. And copy, right? So as you can see, every time I keep refreshing it, the numbers keep changing, right? Just give me a second. Why is it opening this? Okay, so every time I just keep entering, it will keep changing. So therefore, I will just write the formula, and somewhere I will try and fix it. So now it will not change. So now I have got random numbers between 1 and 2. So here what I do is I create this entire thing, I copy this, and I want to find out only about the number of deviation for this particular random 2, right? So what I will do is I will also simultaneously create a name for this. And over here, I need to just count if you are familiar with count ifs, plural ifs, it talks about taking total from two different R&D 50. And I'm going to select 1. So now what it has done is it has selected only 50% of the cases. So similarly over here also, I will write IF, because otherwise my formula is working. So I'm just going to introduce one more selection criteria, which is R&D 50%, 1. And over here also, I'm going to use count ifs. R&D 50, or maybe 2 also I can use. So now, if you see over here, what I've done is, earlier it was 4,800 records. Now I've got 2,000, almost 50% of that, right? And so I've done it for 50%, and I have taken this particular count. So I will get somewhere which is going, deviations are there, somewhere it is not there. Maybe I can use something more over here. I can use random, let's say 33% also. So here I'll say is equal to rand between 1 and 3. And again, I can copy this entire formula down. And over here, I will say R&D. I need to change that. I need to set the formula selection from top rows. R&D 30%. Similarly, I can change it over here. Similarly, I need to change. I hope you understand what I'm doing. What I'm doing is in first case, I am doing a random number for only 50%. So I'm using different random numbers. So these are different loops I've created. So one is a loop for 50%, for 33%, I can have for 25%, 10%, and I can keep going on like this. And then what I can do is I can take a final view about this thing. As you can see over here, now all this part is my tree number 1. Right, which is talking about the first value digit or from the value. This is my tree number 2. This is my tree number 2, which is working on the volume and on the number of trades. And third one is volume or number of trades. So I'm working on 3 different trees, and for each one I have created different loops. So one loop is on 100%, which is there because this is a small database and it's very easy. And but otherwise I can go for a different databases, as you can see over here. And then I will create a heap map to say that, okay, which are the ones where there's a common, like for example, over here, can you see over here? This is a heat map for me because this is common across each one of them. So let me just put some color over here. Similarly, there is a common across over here for this one of them. Then there is a common for this over here, which is there. Then I would want to also see that, okay, now this is very uncommon to me. In this particular heap map over here, for example, I'll put some different color to that. Let's say pink color. Now, generally 4 was not coming anywhere, but in this particular 50% base, it has come out. So that is there something which is like, overall something was getting hidden in the overall data. But when you talk about 50% over here, it has become, suddenly there's an outlier over here. So from that perspective, I can look at which are the ones which are very stray over there. For example, over here. Now, this is also something which is very interesting. Same thing over number 6 over here. So I can, depending upon that, I can find out which one are the ones which are, common, which is uncommon, and then take a overall situation looking at the entire heat wave about this entire thing which is going. For example, over here, this 3 also was. So now this is again a very simplistic, but if you have something where millions of records are there, and if you instead of, if you divide, let's say instead of 3, if you divide something which is 10 or 20 loops, different loops, and instead of 3 or 4 trees, you can have some 10 trees. You may, create a whole bunch of this thing, and then if you take, like, if you put it in a perspective like this, where you see the entire thing, you'll be able to see where the heat wave is, and then you may be able to, for example, if you feel that, okay, this is something which I need to check, so then you can drill down over that, and then you can go to that particular area which is of interest, depending upon how it looks in the overall patterns, and you may want to look at it. So I think this is something which can be very useful to you. So from that perspective, I thought I should be discussing with you about these particular things. So friends, I think it's almost 3, so I would like to stop over here. So this is something which I can suggest to you. If you can take a screenshot of this, okay, these are the 8 different checks which you can do. In each check, you can use the AI in different ways. You can use this assemble approaches also, and work on your databases. All put together, I think it will help you. And thank you so much for the patience hearing. Just before leaving, if there are any questions, we can take that. Otherwise, I will want to stop over here. So, Priyaji, any questions from anywhere?
Definitely. Just give me a second. But before that, I would say such an informative session. I've been listening to this session, and I am sure this was literally fruitful to all the members. Thank you so much for agreeing and taking out your time for taking the session for us. Just give me 2 minutes. I'll just ask the question. Okay, so one of the participant has asked, what advice would you give to young CAs aspiring to build a career in this domain?
Well, I mean, I would say that, do research, because, whatever amount you are doing, I think if you see whatever I have done is all part of my research. There's nothing, I don't think I have learned anywhere all these things. These are all coming through research. And as you must have seen, even I don't have that kind of a very high level languages in terms of, understanding the technical part of it. So today, using AI, if you can do a research in your this thing, I think you can do wonders in terms of whatever area that you are working, whether you are working in industry, whether you are working as a chartered accountant, whether you have your own practice. If you do research and apply all these things wherever you are, I think you can grow exponentially, because using this, I'm sure you can find some value addition for your client, and those clients are going to then take you to a different level. So my advice is keep doing research in this field. And therefore I was just showing you all the, if you see, this was hands-on training I'm showing you. So if you can, this is basically to give you a confidence that it is not that something which is very difficult for us to do. In our normal databases, using some basic tools of Excel, you can create wonders for yourself, and you can still create something more for you. As popularly it is known, you need not do something very different. You only need to do different things in different manner. That is what is more important. There's nothing to do different in terms of overall things. But whatever you're doing, try to do it differently. That is where you are going to get your trajectory.
Right. I just asked you the question. So they're saying, how can smaller firms overcome constraints such as cost, technology access, and skill gaps?
I don't think, I keep saying that, cost is never a constraint. Money is never a constraint. It is a constraint of your ideas. You should not run out of ideas. Now, whatever I have done over here, there is a zero cost I have put over here. There are certain tools which are available, which of course we have paid and all, but whatever I have done is probably you need not have any tools over there. So everything has been done with a zero cost. So similarly, I think there's enough available. If you, as I keep coming back saying, if you do a research, there are a lot of things are available on net, which will teach you, which will show you, which will be guiding you. There are a lot of tools which you can use it for a specific purpose without any cost. So you can use those tools for your this thing. Of course, when you start getting value into it, you may want to subscribe and get them to pay. Otherwise, I think without paying also, there are a lot of things which is available. And as our previous speaker, Mr. Dayanivas, was saying, that even institute is coming out, they are heavily investing into this kind of a thing. So technology is something which is available to you, but the constraint is how do you generate yourself for using that technology. It's only when you feel that hunger that, okay, I'm now getting stopped somewhere, this is something I need to do, but I cannot do because there is no adequate processing power that I have. And that is where then you require to step out and buy something. I don't think you need to buy something to start something. You need to start, and buying should happen only if there is a economic sense for you. So I think from that perspective, keep researching, and cost is never constraint in my opinion.
Right. The next thing is, what are the key red flags and financial data that AI models can help detect more effectively?
Well, there are a host of red flags. I cannot, point out only one or two or something like that. The thing is, as I was showing you in that 8 formula, if you use that, I think those will guide you towards the red flags. Each one of them can generate, for example, duplication tests. There are certain duplicates you can apply. Let's say you can apply duplicates for bill numbers. You can apply for telephone numbers. You can apply for email IDs. You can apply for addresses. If you're working with a bank data, you can apply it in some different format. to find out what are near similarities and things like that. So red flags can be different for different databases. So if you go through that one particular thing, all this 8-check formula, each one of these can identify different sets of red flags for you, and you can use these different concepts. Benford law is one which I showed you. There's another concept which talks about relative size factor. So you can use that. You can use with random forest and bootstrapping approaches. So use as much as possible, and keep using AI as a sounding board. So whatever you do, without putting that database into that, you say that, okay, I have found out these 4 red flags. Is there something more can be found out? AI can throw up more of that, so you can use it from that perspective. I hope that explains.
Okay. Yeah. So the next is, what are the limitations of AI models, such as false positives, negatives, and how can they be mitigated?
Well, there are a lot of negatives. So there, as you correctly said, there are false negatives, there are false positives. There's a huge problem of hallucination that is there. There is another problem where a database can be trained by an external people who are with an ugly bent of mind to not give you a proper this thing. So AI is something which is there in a public domain, and it is a dog which can be trained by itself. So you never know to whom it can be faithful to. It can be faithful to you as a good human being, and it can be faithful to someone who is a terrorist as well. So from that perspective, you need to understand what exactly you are getting it, and whom are you getting it from. So you need to keep testing. Whatever AI throws at you, you cannot just take it and consume as it is. You need to also apply your mind. That human intelligence is very important to check whether is it something where you are working with a set of resources which is going to help you, or it's going to harm you. So that is something that you need to constantly keep evaluating, and so there is no one way, but you need to keep constantly checking on that. Maybe what you can do is you can take output from one AI tool and then feed it to another AI tool to say that, to check, is there something which is wrong. So it's like there was one story of one lady who was playing with the chess masters of 2 individuals who two great one grand slam this thing, and she had no knowledge of chess, but actually what she was doing was she was playing the other chess moves with each one of them. Like what second used to play, she used to come and play with the first one. So something like that you need to do. You need to play with the 2 AI tools and see whether you are getting your same results or not.
Okay. How can CS build specialized practices in forensic data analytics and AI-based investigation?
So as I say, you need to keep practicing. I mean, ultimately, you are always evolved with your clients, how you get your businesses and what kind of a work you do. So if you need to build up in a forensic practice, you need to start getting into with the people who are into the forensics world of forensics, and then work with them. As and when they keep getting assignments, you will also be evolved with that, how the entire thing is happening. So it's forensic is something which is an experience game. So it will come with experience. I've been in this field for last 35, 40 years of CA practice, in the last 20 years purely in forensics. So it's like, we have evolved with time. And at that time, 20, 30 years back, there was not much material available also. But now with the internet and all, there are a lot of material which is available. So research on that, to start doing it somewhere. If you get yourself hooked to people who are into forensics, you will grow faster in forensics. If not, wherever you are doing a normal audits and whatever you are doing, try to build in some elements of forensics approaches in that. Say you are doing a statutory audit, right? So statutory audit, you need to have certain plans, right? Because you are guided by your way of doing certain things. So you do that, but reserve some 10% of that in doing something what I've been talking about, doing some data analysis, doing something which is not done before. Think of something which is not done before. So unless you do that, you will never be able to put a spanner in someone else's wheel, which is there. So try to do something different in that. Like, for example, if you have been doing normal audits, suppose you are doing statutory audit. Now in statutory audit, you never look at the master database of suppliers, right? You generally look at the purchase database, purchase vouchers, inventories, and things like that. So why can't you look at the master database? Can you find something wrong? Is there something interesting in the master database? Like to find out whether Are there companies with the same kind of telephone numbers, with the same addresses, with the same contact numbers? Now, those are the things which can tell you that, okay, these are the people which are under the same group or under the same management. So from that perspective, you can look. So try to do something different. I mean, there is no, I mean, it can be like, there will be a big list of events that you can do. But I mean, how would I say that? Your imagination is your own limits. So whatever you can imagine, try to do from that perspective. Again, depending upon the time and resources available at your command.
Okay. I think we'll take this last question. So it is, how can CS collaborate with data scientists and IT professionals in complex investigations?
See, this collaboration is a very dicey term because, especially when you're investigating, we generally don't collaborate unless you have been forced to collaborate. Because collaborating meaning you have to share what are your things are doing. Because most of the time, we are doing certain things which are not known. Various times, we are doing some audits or, we are doing some kind of investigation where except one or two people in the organization, no one is even aware about what we are doing. We don't even enter the premises. We are sitting in our office. Some data is given to us on some different pretext. This has been generated by those one or two people, and they come to us. Now, if you are working with that kind of a scenario, you need to be very careful about how you collaborate, because collaborating means you need to also, show certain things. So it's like, you're going on a war, and let's say, for example, India is in war with some other neighboring country, and if you go and you start collaborating with someone, you don't know how that person is. And when you're collaborating also, you need to collaborate on need to know or need to work basis. So otherwise, you generally should not collaborate unless it is absolutely necessary. And even while collaboration also, many times you should collaborate on some different pretext so that the person is not aware about exactly what you are doing. Because you need to be guarded, because information and your knowledge, what you are getting is very, very paramount, especially when you are working in investigation situation. So you should collaborate with a caution. But of course, whatever you need to do, you need to do. For example, IT people. Now, IT people, you need to get some databases or something like that. But you need not say that it is for investigation. You can say that you are working on some improvisation model of some sales, or you're helping some company to develop some system, and therefore you need to have certain email data to understand how people are writing emails or something like that. So you can collaborate from that perspective. But if you say that, okay, I'm investigating something and all that thing, maybe that person, he may be also involved with that. That's why you need to be careful, because you really don't know who is involved at what level. So from that perspective, you need to be careful and be cautious about it.
Thank you so much, sir. That were all the questions that we had. Thank you so much for taking out your time and taking up the session. Thank you so much, sir.
So thanks,
Definitely conduct
Priyaji,
one
and thanks
more.
everyone. And as a last, departing this thing, I would just like to, remind you of those quotes of our ex-president APJ Abdul Kalam. He said that if you salute your work, there is no need to salute anybody. But if you pollute your work, you may have to salute each and everybody. So from that perspective, I think whatever we have discussed, it will help you to salute your work. Keep saluting your work, and I'm sure everyone can go to greater heights from wherever you are. So thank you for this opportunity, and look forward to be more interactive in future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We can log out.